Ukrainian soldiers are on high alert as the threat of Russia invading Ukraine remains acute. The EU Foreign Policy Chief is visiting the Eastern Front, where Russian-backed separatists are facing Ukrainian government forces. The aim of the two-day trip: show political support for Kyiv.
It is a European crisis and the solution is European. In that framework, in that respect, this is very, very important that the High Representative of the European institutions dedicate the first trip of the year to Kyiv and the front line.
Josep Borrell has complained that the European Union has no seat at the negotiating table when the United States and Russia start another round of high-level talks on Sunday to de-escalate the crisis. But neither Washington nor Moscow seem too keen to engage Brussels over the matter. Vladimir Putin wants reassurances that NATO will not accept any new members to the east, especially not Ukraine. For such assurances, he needs Joe Biden.
Fundamentally, my expectation of these negotiations are that they will fail because the premise of these negotiations, as laid out by the Russian government, are utterly unacceptable and basically amounts to an ultimatum.
Should the Biden-Putin talks fail, Washington wants to impose harsh sanctions on Russia. But to make these work, they'd need the full support of the European Union. But on how to deal best with Russia, Europe remains divided.
Well, let's get a bit more now on the visit to Ukraine by the EU's top diplomat. Joining me now from Kyiv is Andreas Umland. He is an analyst at the Stockholm Centre for Eastern European Studies at the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. Well, thanks for joining us here. Well, the EU seems to have had a bit of a diminished role, not invited to those talks between the United States and Russia over Ukraine. Why do you think that is?
Well, this is partly, I guess, due to the Russian policy that is focusing on the US and has identified Washington as the partner for the communication. But partly that is also due to the now security and military aspects of the Russian-Ukrainian relations or tensions that have now become preeminent and that therefore make the US a more important actor here for Kyiv than the European Union, although most Ukrainians would rather define their countries as a partner and as a part of the European Union, and the US would perhaps be more far away, so to say.
Well, you mentioned Ukrainians there. How is this visit by Josep Borrell then being viewed?
I guess the most important expectation in Kyiv here that the government and many Ukrainians have is that how far the EU will, in economic terms, in the future support Ukraine in two ways. In terms of the sanctions against Russia that should be expanded, the issue of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and also in terms of the direct economic support that the EU could provide for Ukraine in this difficult situation. The hybrid war that Russia is conducting against Ukraine does not only include military instruments, but also many non-military instruments. And here the EU can be a very potent partner for Ukraine, and Ukraine wants much more assistance and cooperation from the EU than it currently receives.
And what about Borrell then? What do you think he'll be looking to get out of this trip?
Well, I guess he will be mostly coming to listen. That's at least what I hope, and that he will then communicate back to Brussels what the mood and what the expectations here are. This, at least, is what I would be hoping this visit should bring about. And also, of course, he will be giving signs and signals here of support. The problem with these many good words that have been uttered by Borrell and by many others is that they are not always congruent to the actions. that the European Union has been taking in the last 8 years. And therefore, Ukrainians are now a little bit wary about such visits, such symbolic means of support, and they are looking for concrete answers what the EU will do.